A place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you live and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network, the X Zone Broadcast Network, Digital Broadcast Network, and the Digital Satellite Network. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradio.com. And, of course, you can listen to the X Zone 724-365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com, as well as on all social media sites, xzoneradiotv.com. We're going to be talking about astrology this hour, X Zone Nation. Our guest is Mike. And, Mike, how do you pronounce your family name?
Hi, Rob. It's SVEHLA.
SVEHLA. Thanks very much for joining us, Mike. Mike's been studying astrology since November of 2006, asking people if he could read their natal charts, led to people asking him to do so, and then to people willing to pay for an analysis of their personality and glimpse of their future via the heavens. Joining me now is Mike SVEHLA. And Mike, thanks very much for joining us tonight. How come you're not watching the debate?
Oh, certainly. Thanks for having me on your show. Good question. I would love to be watching the Republican debate right now, but I'm also happy to give some analysis on it. I'm sure I can catch it later on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, too. It's I watched the first debate, and, the four bottom guys did a pretty good job. It's different to see how they approached each of the questions, even though Jake Tapper tried to get them going with the Donald Trump scenarios. It didn't work, and these guys decided, well, you know what? Hey, Trump's part of the GOP, even though George Pataki said he wouldn't vote for Trump if he won the nomination. But it's going to be an interesting time, and I'm sure as an astrologer, you've taken the charts of each one of these candidates and tried to make sense of it. And I have to ask you, is this a common thing for astrologers to do in a time when so much is riding on the next presidential election?
Absolutely. The presidential elections are always a hot topic when the elections roll around every 4 years. And usually at the major conference, the UAC, the astrologers have a kind of a finale at the end of the conference where they give predictions regarding the two candidates who were selected by each party. And it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. How did you start getting into astrology? You know, you've been doing this since 2006. What was it that brought you to the astrological scenario?
Good question. My best answer, I suppose, is that I just started to fall into astrology. It looked interesting, and then I started delving into it more. My background is in economics, and economics deals with cycles and perhaps looking at future trends. And that fits astrology well. I've always enjoyed the stars and planets, and of course, I also enjoy mythology. And I became adept at using the astrology software. Mm-hmm. And over the past several years, I've been honing my skills, and it's been a blast. It's been fun, but it's also been quite insightful. And this presidential election is a good example of how not only can you take some kind of mundane, regular political analysis, but really give some good insight and predictions by using the heavens.
Now, what is your approach to predicting who will win the presidency in 2016?
A lot of it is based on the candidate's natal chart. In other words, the positions of the planets among the zodiac when they were born, and looking at other techniques used to make predictions. The field of candidates is, especially on the Republican side, is pretty broad, and there's just so many good people, very articulate, smart, and tough people on each side, especially in that crowded Republican field. I think it's starting to get shaken out a little bit, but we're not really going to know for sure until I looked ahead at March 1st. Super Tuesday in the U.S. when a lot of states have their primary. And then after March, that's pretty much when things are decided, although things can get taken further to the conventions. But I don't think we've seen that for, since the 70s. Perhaps Reagan had to do that against Bush. I don't quite remember.
Mm-hmm. So based on the astrological charts of some of the presidential candidates, both Democratic and Republican, how about Hillary Clinton? What are her chances to win the actual nomination and then be president, according to your findings as an astrologer?
Not good. She has some configurations that are dragging her down a bit. She needs to get past the scandals, but the problem is I looked ahead, and not only is it going to take about a year for her charts to clear up in that regard, but we're looking at, I'm thinking, another major kind of revelation or altogether different scandal is on the horizon sometime, anytime after April. So she lucked out and got past that critical Super Tuesday date in March. There's about 15 states, I think, have their primaries in March, or perhaps a few more, and a lot of big states. So she lucked out in that regard. But I see what a lot of her charts are saying is that she just doesn't have. She's a Scorpio sun, and she's very kind of secretive, and you can see that in her campaign and her personality. And that, it's not that that's bad. She's very power-oriented, and she's a very tough person. But she's also not very good in public.
Yeah.
So her charts also reflect that. So I think it's a very odd situation for the Democrats that she's the front runner, but a lot of the Democratic voters seem to be saying we want another person. And then, Joe Biden has not even entered the race, and he's running a strong third.
Yeah, he is. So, he's really doing great.
Based on what I'm seeing, it doesn't look so good for Hillary right now, and I don't see good chances for her to win the nomination.
What about Bernie Sanders? Like this guy here, he seems like, I'm from Montreal originally. We used to go down to New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, and, he's the typical person that you would meet in any of these three states.
That's cool. I have not heard him speak extensively. Mm-hmm. One thing I noticed about Sanders, I don't have a birth time, so it's harder to make predictions. Hopefully, if as time wears on, we'll have someone will reveal a time of birth for Sanders. He was born in New York, and he was born just before World War II started.
Yeah.
He's a very kind of humble and yet very, you can see a very strong, resolute kind of personality, kind of forceful, but he's also very good at reaching people. So I think that Virgo sun is very adept at focusing on details. And then the Mercury in Libra and Venus in Libra is very adept at reaching out and collaborating and communicating with other people. And his strong Mars is very ambitious and determined. So you can see that in his kind of grassroots, socially oriented kind of campaign. But I think if Biden enters the race, he will not be able to withstand Biden.
Right.
But if Biden does not enter, and I think Biden is going to enter the race, if Biden does not enter the race, I think he could really give Hillary Clinton a run for her money. Sanders' problem, I think, is he kind of gets caught up in details and has a hard time, seeing the big picture and strategizing, which I know he's probably got good people helping him do that. But it remains to be seen if the attracting the large crowds and the grassroots kind of message is going to resonate. And right now, it certainly is.
Mm-hmm. How about Joe Biden? Based on his astrology, do you think that he's actually going to come into the race, or is he going to stay aside? Because my heart goes out to Joe after having lost his son so close to this point in his life.
I agree. I was sorry to hear that his son died. My prediction is that Biden will run, and there's been rumors about Biden. He's saying he wants to, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't know if he'll be able to do that this time around. One thing I noticed about Biden is, and with a lot of the candidates, we have kind of a unusual situation where we've got several candidates who would be older than Ronald Reagan by the time they assumed office if they were voted as president. So Biden, not that Biden and other candidates would not be able to serve well because of age, but that's one interesting factor in the race for sure. And then with Biden, I see a couple things, and I'll try to be succinct. The date to watch for Biden is an announcement after September 28th. So my guess is early October for an announcement. He might announce later, but if I were him and I were running, I would not wait too long to announce. And then there's another date between now and March 2016, so that's quite a window of time. I'm not saying I know this, but what I'm seeing in the charts is an indication of some kind of personal scandal that could be in the cards. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know, but maybe that's why he's also giving a second thought to running and how to handle that. And then he's a strong candidate. He's a Scorpio sun sign like Hillary, but he has some more Jupiter influence in his chart, and that's good. And I see some, and again quickly, there's an indication. For example, he has one of the features in his chart that's exactly conjunct the United States birth chart natal moon. So that's very strong. So he's got some strong indications. I'm actually quite amazed. The Cancer sign is important when you consider the United States national politics, because the U.S. birth chart has so many placements in Cancer. His Jupiter, quite amazingly, is in late Cancer, and then his progressed Jupiter is conjuncting his natal vertex right now. So if he decides to run, and I think he will, he has a lot of things going for him in his charts.
Exonation, my guest this hour is Mike SVEHLA, and we're talking about astrology. Now, Mike has a site at www.triplewaterastrology.com, and please like him at Facebook. That's facebook.com/triplewaterastrology. All right, big question. Donald Trump.
Trump. Good question.
I love the guy.
I think there's not again, I know time is limited and there's just so much information. To be hopefully succinct, Trump has a very good chance of being elected. And I know that you can't necessarily always go by the polls, and they can vacillate and so on. More mundanely, Trump has a good shot, and he's popular, I think, in part because he's a New Yorker, and he says what's on his mind, and he's good at being aggressive and going after people, and he's also a celebrity, and he's been on TV, and I think that gives him instant recognition and a lot of appeal for voters. And then, of course, on top of that, he has a very strong message that a lot of the Republican base likes to hear at this time. During Obama's ending his 8 years as president. So Trump has a lot going for him without even looking at the charts. And then when you look at the charts, he has just fantastic alignments going on in his charts. And his planets align well with the U.S. birth chart, for example. And then probably for those interested in astrology, he has his progressed sun is starting to conjunct the fixed star Regulus. And this is very significant because it's very benefic, for one thing, but it's also significant because in the U.S. we don't have a king, but the closest figure we have to a king is the president. And I think Regulus and Trump's progressed son symbolize him stepping into the Oval Office elected in 2017 very well. So there's many factors are looking up and looking very good for Donald Trump in the charts as well.
As an astrologer, all right, this is going to come out of left field. Wouldn't it be to these candidates' advantage if they were to call you up and say, listen, Mike, can you give me the scoop on the other guys?
I think, sure, that's an interesting question. One problem, I think, is that if and I really dig astrology. I'm an astrologer.
Right.
But I think the U.S. and the people in the U.S. are not ready for that kind of thing yet. And astrologers would definitely be helpful to a presidential campaign. But if anyone found out and news got out that candidates were consulting astrologers, that would be very risky, and I don't think they would take that chance. And doubtlessly, you and the audience would recall Nancy Reagan and the news about her consulting an astrologer when Reagan was president.
Yeah.
And I think the U.S. is not at the point where astrologers would be consulted by campaigns or generally by politicians. However, I would agree that definitely an astrologer could give insights about other candidates that want an advantage if that's what they want to do.
You know, I know a personnel director of a major construction company who uses an astrologer on all management personnel. And it served her well.
Sure. The without getting into too much jargon, I've found that astrology, I can't tell you how it works, and I have my theories about how it works, but I've just found that it works.
Yeah.
And if you can align your actions with the heavens, I've often seen very good results. So I definitely have experienced that myself, and of course that's what I try to give insight to clients for, and I offer dates and other windows of time so they can act and hopefully have a better chance of achieving what they want to achieve.
Before we get back to the candidates and electoral astrology, I have to ask him, Mike, how does astrology work? Like, you look up at the sky at night and you see all these stars. How is it astrology is so exact?
I think astrology is the oldest science. It's the oldest way of portending the future. Mm-hmm. So we've had thousands of years to experience the planets in each sign and understand the symbolism. And how a planet manifests is via its sign. There's 12 signs in the ring of the zodiac, and it's a very significant event when one planet moves from one sign to the other. We're in the midst of Saturn moving into Sagittarius from Scorpio right now, and that can change the tenor of, for example, societal structures, people's careers, the business world, and so on. So there's a lot of symbolism involved with just one planet and how it manifests. And then, of course, you can't just look at one planet. You have to look at all of them acting, in tandem or interacting with each other in the zodiac. And fortunately, we have this neat software that provides a model of the heavens at any moment in time you choose. You just tell the computer the dates, and then you can see based on the positions of the planets in the zodiac, not only what's going on, in the solar system, but in the world, and even how it might affect you personally. So it's very powerful in that regard. And I can't give. Hopefully, this comes a little closer to answering the question. I often have remarked that if we had to know how everything worked before we used it, we still wouldn't be using fire.
That's true.
So I think that's a roundabout way of saying, I don't completely understand astrology, and I don't pretend to, but I can observe the effects of it and use it in that regard, and it's very powerful.
It still amazes me, based on the time of birth, the place of birth, how astrology is so dead on. You know?
I would agree to it, but it's a great question. It's definitely worth more thought, and I know a lot of people have different opinions about it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say also that, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this, but there has been a very good astrologer that I've read an article who compares doing astrology to what a medical doctor would do. And the medical doctor observes what's going on in the body and prescribes something or gives advice based on what he observes. It's not that he understands perfectly every function in the human body, and I think the astrologer who makes that point makes a very good point, that astrologers don't necessarily know exactly how all of these energies, what's behind all these energies interacting and affecting us. It's just that we know they do, and we can observe the effects. And the powerful thing about astrology is we know the positions of the planets, days, weeks, months, years
Mm-hmm.
from now. So in that sense, prediction can be a very useful tool for astrologers.
Right. Exonation, once again, my guest is Mike SVEHLA, and we're talking about astrology. Okay, let's get back to the candidates. Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson.
Okay, excellent. Ben Carson, he is, and again, there's so much information, but I'll try to boil it down. He is also Sun in Virgo, so he's very mercurial, very analytical and earthy, and sharp and articulate person. And not only does he have the Sun in Mercury sign, he also has Mercury in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see this humble, kind of calm demeanor, very intelligent and articulate, he's manifesting his Mercury Sun very well, I think, communicating and very, very clear thinking and sharp analysis of what he wants to say and the delivery of it. So he's quite the candidate, and very little known until the first debate, I think, and now he's currently running second in the polls behind Donald Trump.
Right.
And Carson, and the other, Carson was a neurosurgeon.
Yes.
Or he is. He's a neurosurgeon and at the top of his field. He also has a very strong Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, discipline, structure, and authority. And Saturn is loosely conjunct his Sun, and I think that also shows in his career. He has to be very disciplined and collaborate well under a very obtrusive structure when he's a surgeon in a medical field type of career. And I think that if he manages to get elected, that will be very effective when he's president, assuming he gets elected. So he can apply these talents that he has as a surgeon very well to being a politician according to his chart. And certainly I see that when he's in the debates and speaking and campaigning. Now, Carson, I do not have a time of birth, and I wish I did. And it's very interesting that Carson somewhat reflects Bernie Sanders' chart. Sanders is also a Virgo, and they might also have the same moon sign. Of course, they're different, but they do have a strong link if Carson also has moon in Aries. And I think Carson has an appeal because he's an outsider, but voters who dislike kind of Trump's brash, aggressive delivery have found that Carson resonates well with what they want in a candidate on the Republican side. And so I think he has a good shot. But I'm not sure that he has the demeanor even if he wins the nomination, my question would be is if he has enough aggression and if he'll be willing to attack back when he'll be attacked by the Democratic opponent.
Right.
So I think voters might also consider that. The dates to watch out for Carson. He will probably come on strong in early this November,
right,
and maybe a little bit more in December. However, I wonder if he will be able to continue to be popular and influential by the time that important Super Tuesday, March 1st day rolls around. So he's a good candidate. Mm-hmm. He has a lot to offer, but he feels a bit overshadowed by Trump. I wish I had a time of birth and I could probably give a better analysis.
Mike, stand by. You and I have to take our commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, Mike SVEHLA is our special guest. We're talking astrology. Mike's website is www.triplewaterastrology.com, and like him on Facebook at facebook.com/triplewaterastrology. Mike and I will be back after the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. In the world today, most people want what is called the American dream. They want love, a family, a fancy car, and a nice home in a nice neighborhood. They also want a good job and money to travel to interesting places. Life is great because they have the American dream. But what happens to this dream if they hear they have a devastating illness like lung cancer? The doctor may tell them they need treatment immediately or they will be dead in 6 months. He tells them, you need surgery, and then you need chemotherapy to get better. When they get home, they think of many unanswered questions. They ask themselves, will I survive when so many of my friends with cancer have died? How will I deal with the pain, hair loss, nausea and vomiting, sore mouth, and other side effects of chemotherapy and pain of surgery? Will I be able to keep on working? What will happen to my family? Then they look at the internet and wonder, is there a better way to deal with lung cancer and return to my American dream? Carl Helvey can tell you yes, there is a better way. Carl Helvey is a registered nurse with a doctorate in public health and a 38-year lung cancer survivor. Carl was given 6 months to live when diagnosed, and he refused chemotherapy and surgery. Carl used alternative interventions. Those not only helped him overcome lung cancer, but also to remain cancer-free and healthy for over the past 36 years since recovery. In his book, You Can Beat Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions, Dr. Helvey will tell you his story of using all-natural treatments for lung cancer and continuing to work during his treatment. Free of pain and discomfort, Carl will also share how he remained cancer and disease-free since then without chronic illnesses or prescribed medications. His story is supplemented with chapters by Dr. Bernie Siegel, Dr. Francesco Contreras, and Dr. James Forsyth, alternative integrative physicians, and Dr. Kim Dalzell and Tanya Harder-Pierce, health professionals. All have successfully helped others overcome cancer. Research presented by the alternative physicians on their treatments for lung cancer demonstrate a significantly higher long-term survival rate for lung cancer clients than those obtained by conventional doctors. In addition, their clients were free of or had reduced side effects. You Can Beat Lung Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions by Dr. Carl Helvey is now available at all major book outlets and at www.beatlungcancer.net. That's www.beatlungcancer.net. This information may help you return to the American dream. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464. Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com. Welcome back, X Zone Nation. Next hour, Jose Escamilla is going to be our guest here on the X Zone. And he's going to tell you how Steven Spielberg, you know, the mega mogul in the movie industry, you know, we're talking about E.T. and those other great movies, has stolen his property, intellectual property. It's an exclusive coming up next here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. This hour, we're talking to Mike SVEHLA. We're talking about astrology and how we can use astrology to take a look behind the star scenes of the presidential candidates. And let's see, where were we? Let's go back now and talk about the one and only Jeb, who Donald Trump says is so ashamed of his family name that he just calls himself Jeb. And of course, we're talking about Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeb is most interesting. Now he's not polling well.
Nope.
That is of interest in part because he has the most campaign funds.
Yep.
So it just like with the Democratic side, we have kind of an odd situation with some of the candidates, and I think Jeb Bush is he still has a shot. But the field is crowded, and the average Republican voter who's going to vote in the primary seems a bit discontent with the establishment, so to speak, or the status quo. So that's uphill for Jeb, and he's actually, I think he's a little bit different person than his persona on the debate stage or in the campaign is saying, and that's another problem he has, I think. He has Sun in Aquarius, and he's actually, if you read his wiki profile or biography, he's actually quite smart. He's a very smart person, and he's articulate, but I think he has trouble getting that message out that he wants to get out, or else. I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding, perhaps among voters of what he's trying to say, or maybe like I said, it just could be the case that at this point voters don't want to hear his message. But anyway, he's very much the old guard, as his last name suggests. He's a brother of a president and a son of a president, and he has. So far as the charts go, he just doesn't have a lot of connections to the U.S. birth chart that's helping him out. There's another problem is Uranus is a very strong planet for Jeb, but he's going through one of his Uranus quarter returns, which is a more difficult time, and that's not propitious for running a presidential campaign. And let me see as far as the dates go, I do see some difficulties possibly at the end of the year, December, and if he's going to turn things around, he'll have to do so in this late October or early November. I think he can, especially because he's well funded. But he would have to find a way to kind of grandstand with Donald Trump, and so far he hasn't been effective in doing so.
You know, I look at Jeb Bush, and he's got no personality. I think a flounder found on Miami Beach has more personality than Jeb Bush does.
I have thought maybe the problem with Jeb is that he has trouble projecting his personality and his message to a mass audience. Good question. I'm not sure. I don't think. I wonder if he has reluctance to run, or his energy level's been criticized, or so on. He's definitely got the groundwork laid, but I would agree he needs to have some kind of a hook for voters to latch on to, whether that's personality or maybe changing his message around. I'm not sure. But he's running. He's a little bit distant, so it's if he doesn't turn it around, the chances are not so good for Jeb, I think.
Let me ask you this, if I could. You know, as an American, have you ever seen politics like you're witnessing now? It seems that the old guard isn't what's interesting to the voting public. You know, like if anybody would have told me last year that Donald Trump would be running for president of the United States, I admire the man. I respect his knowledge. I respect what he's done. I would have said, "You're nuts." But bang, here he is leading the pack.
Trump entering the race is definitely unique. Now, the first thing it reminded me of is Ross Perot entering the race. Kind of a renegade billionaire saying we need to do things this way and that way. And Perot was talking about NAFTA. Trump's talking about immigration. So they definitely Perot back in the 80s, and then and this time around Trump really know how to hit a nerve with the Republican base. And then the other kind of interesting aspect of this time around is the crowded Republican field with so many candidates that have not been in elected office.
Right.
And then when you add all that up with the debates and the networks trying to attract ratings, you get Marco Rubio making a humorous comment about the debates are not a game show, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of a little bit of maybe a circus atmosphere is in danger of taking over, and a lot of people are looking at it as entertainment rather than a way to, or at least in addition to a way of making a more informed choice about who they want to vote for. It's definitely interesting. I think we definitely need a strong leader with the world the way it is at this point, and in that sense, I think all the candidates are doing their job, including Trump and the other candidates who haven't held office.
Speaking about other candidates, can you comment on Ted Cruz?
Oh, sure. Let me find my notes.
And while you're finding your notes, I'm going to let our listeners know how they can find you on the web. Exonation Mike's website is triplewaterastrology.com, and like him on Facebook at facebook.com/triplewaterastrology.
Cruz is at a point where he's the charts look pretty good for Cruz.
Yeah.
He's in a kind of a place where he has a solid base of support, but he needs to find a way to expand it. And I'm not sure if Cruz is going to be able to do that or not. Most likely, he will try to stay the course and attract more conservative voters. And I think he's a solid candidate. He's very one thing about Cruz, according to his chart, and I have a birth time for Cruz, which is very fortunate. He's a candidate who can be very serious and authoritative, and yet very personable. And I think that comes across in his speeches and when he's on stage. I'm not sure he really stood out so much in the first debate, But he's the other thing about Cruz is he's very, very smart. I believe he went to Harvard, or he has a law degree from Harvard. I don't really remember his education, but it's very, very high level, and he's a very smart person, very educated. So it's a little like Bush. Can he turn that very keen knowledge about policy and how to handle difficult problems for the U.S. as the president into an appealing message for voters? And I think he will probably last longer than a lot of the other Republican candidates. Mm-hmm. This October is important for Cruz. He could get a possible boost in mid-October, and the next 4 to 5 months is very strong for Cruz. However, one of his most important dates is early April. So if he can manage to do on Super Tuesday and throughout the March primaries, I think he has a good shot at still obtaining the nomination. But it depends on whether he can, like I said, turn that message into something appealing for a broader segment of voters.
Based on your analysis of the charts, who do you predict will be the winner of the 2016 presidential election?
Okay.
Or am I putting you on the spot here?
Not at all. I've definitely thought a great deal about that. It depends, because if Biden enters the race,
yeah,
I think Biden will obtain the nomination. I expect him to enter the race, but if he doesn't, in the outside chance that he doesn't, we're looking at either Sanders or Hillary, and I think Sanders actually has the edge over Hillary. So we're looking at most likely Biden on the Democrat side, and then if not Biden, at least the charts are saying Sanders. I think the structure that Hillary has set up would make it difficult for Sanders to obtain the nomination. But then again, it's ultimately up to the voters, even with all the money and power players on each side of the aisle. With the Republicans, I think Trump will. A different way of putting it is, I think Trump will get what he wants. I still think there's a chance, based on Trump's charts, that he will go third party if he feels like he needs to. And it sounds odd because he's committed to the Republican to stay Republican. He said he's not going to do that, and so on. I still think if he doesn't get what he wants, or he has some very good reason to abandon the nomination and go third party, he just might. So that's a factor. And then I think Carson, if Carson manages to find more voters who will vote for him, and he wins a lot of primaries, he could hold out and get the nomination. But I think Cruz and Carly Fiorina are also strong, and a lot of this is based on the March 1st date that I'm looking at for Super Tuesday. So my guess is that Trump will be the Republican nominee and face Biden, and I think Trump would win. But there's so many other possibilities that other scenarios have to be considered. I think if Trump goes third party, we're looking at President Biden.
And if Biden doesn't come in, would that mean Hillary in the White House? Based on that scenario, if Trump was to go to a third party?
If Biden doesn't enter the race and Trump goes third party, I would probably guess Hillary. But I think Sanders has an edge. So it depends on whether Democratic voters have confidence in Sanders. It seems like a lot of younger people, millennials, and all the talk about the more left of the party supports Sanders. Hillary is more the old guard of the party,
right?
Something like that. I think Sanders, he could possibly get the nomination. But I like I said, I wish I had a birth time for Sanders. It does look a little bit better for Sanders, but I would say Hillary, unless there's a huge event that causes her to become unpopular, like the scandals become deeper and worse, or there's a new one. I think Hillary would take have a slight advantage over Sanders and obtain the nomination. But then again, we could be looking at literally a situation where the nomination is decided during the convention. So if anything else, I can promise you it will be very interesting.
I'm sure it will. Have you ever gone back and looked at the astrological charts of past presidential elections to see how accurate the prediction was?
That I have not personally done.
Mm-hmm.
However, at the last two astrology conferences, the major conferences, the astrologers were able to pick Barack Obama as the elected president.
Yeah.
But that's I personally have not gone to past elections to look at the candidates. I would tend to look at I know I've looked at a couple past presidents' charts, and I found interesting characteristics among them, but I haven't looked at past presidential elections or made predictions. This is my first election year to do so.
Sounds like you're doing a great job.
Awesome, thank you.
How long does it take for you to do a complete astrological analytical chart for people who seek your services?
Well, you're never really done studying a chart, but depending on the level of detail they want and what I'm looking for, it can take quite a while. It can take a matter of even a kind of a superficial blurb about someone's chart. It takes a decent amount of time. And then depending on the level of detail, certainly when you're looking into the future, several hours at the minimum is required.
Interesting. What would you say is the most useful use for astrology based on you doing charts for a living as a professional astrologer?
Sure. I really like letting people know what their natal promise is, or in other words, the characteristics of their personality based on their moment in time, the exact date and time of their birth and the place. Mm-hmm. But more so, I think the greatest benefit of astrology can be attained by looking into the future. And I really like looking at windows of time for those who consult me to be able to say, if you have this certain goal, you want to be promoted, or it could be anything, but you want to find a job, or have financial goals. Sure. This is your time to put the effort in, and then watch for some key dates, and then evaluate where you're at, and then there's going to be more or less fortunate times or productive times for a person to take action. But whenever I do a reading for someone, I always really emphasize, please pay attention to the dates and try to time your goals to the dates. I often see, I see periods of time. I say, within a year, this is what you may want to consider. And I look out, to 5 years or even beyond. And often there's a very convenient kind of timetable for someone to look at. About once a year there's a major event, so you can look at this time frame and see where you're at so far as your goals and what you want to accomplish. And then the next year during that date you can evaluate in the same manner, and hopefully you've progressed and so on. So the future is definitely the greatest appeal to me of looking at someone's chart.
Mike, the time has come when you and I must say so long, but I must say it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for putting an astrological spin on the election that's going to be happening next year. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and how they can contact you.
Certainly, my website is www.triplewaterastrology.com, and then I maintain an active Facebook page at www.facebook.com/triplewaterastrology. If someone wants to contact me or find out more about readings, that information is on my website.
And that's how simple it is. Mike, I want to thank you so much again. Stay in touch. Love to have you back on the show in the future.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Take care now. Once again, Exonation, if you'd like to contact Mike for a one-on-one consultation, www.triplewaterastrology.com, and like him on Facebook, Triple Water Astrology. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.